Good morning.
So,
That's a little loud.
so I'm gonna read just a brief of your bio right quick.
Okay.
Susan is the president and managing director of BBG Ventures, an early stage fund backing the new wave of female entrepreneurs using technology to reimagine daily life. What does that mean?
It means that I think that because of technology advances, the startup world has opened up to a much broader range of entrepreneurs. And into that mix have come a lot of female founders. We've seen over 1,000 companies with at least one female founder. Most of them are entirely female founders in less than 2 years, because we launched in September of 2014. So it's a big wave. And what we see is that they're problem solvers. They look at some aspect of daily life, work life, home life, leisure, and they say, I can make this better. I know how to create a product or a service that will make life more efficient or simpler or even sometimes just more fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, before BB Ventures, you have had one of the most impressive careers I've seen of anybody. You were in media, Walt Disney, AOL, one of the founders of the Guilt Group. What was your journey like, and what were some of your keys to success?
So I have been working for a long time. I started working in the 70s, and this is pre-internet, obviously pre-smartphones, but I went into media because that was where the conversation was taking place. That was where people formed ideas about culture and society and politics, and so it was the most exciting place you could be if those things interested you. And I was in the magazine business for about 15 years. I worked for a number of different publications, including The Village Voice and New Times, and ultimately started a magazine called Premiere about the movies and the movie business. Then I went to Disney, largely because they asked me. I'm also from that generation of women who did not necessarily plan our careers. I was ambitious. I wanted to make a difference, but I was often the only woman in the room for a long time. And most of the time I was at Disney, I was at ABC, first running long form for them and then running prime time. And I got famously fired just before we launched Grey's Anatomy and Desperate Housewives and Lost, which were all on the schedule that I'd picked up. But it changed my life in many ways because after that, I got my first CEO job. I became the CEO of the Martha Stewart Company. And from there, went to Guilt as the CEO, and moved on to AOL in 2013, and in 2014, launched BBG Ventures. So I would say if there's a through line in all of this, it's two things. One is that I like to be where the conversation with consumers is taking place. That was media for a long time. It's now digital platforms. And secondly, I have been, my entire career has really been focused on women, on that female consumer, whether it was magazines or it was TV or it was Guilt. And I feel like I know her pretty well, but I was incredibly pissed off that so little venture capital was going to to founders, to entrepreneurs who also knew that consumer incredibly well. And I see it as a big opportunity, and that's why I'm doing it.
That's great. So when I submitted the questions to Susan and your team, and I had this one question, and I looked at some of the feedback, it was like, should we delete that question, not have it? It's the question I'm about to ask. And I get into the why after I ask it. So the question is, BBG Ventures doesn't lead rounds. It's a follow-on in terms of women-led companies. But you do focus on early stage.
Yes.
Why don't you lead rounds? And yeah, why don't you?
Yeah, that's a fair question. Our first fund was a pretty small fund. It was $10 million. Our loan limited partner was AOL. So we have made investments that ranged from $100,000 to $250,000. We do very occasionally lead, but we don't lead institutional rounds. So we've done a few pre-seed investments, in which case we are the largest investor. But when we launch our second fund, which will probably be next fall, it'll be a bigger fund, and we'll make bigger investments. And I think in some instances, yes, we will lead.
That's great. And the reason that question is important to me and why I want to ask it is because with female founders and other underrepresented founders, raising that initial seed capital is so important. It's a signal that this is a potential high-growth company.
Yep.
So we need more funds for the angel and seed round to lead rounds, not be follow-on. So that's great to hear that when you do the second fund, you possibly take more of that.
Yes.
Great. So on that same kind of theme, Catherine Finney, who's a New York local, and she did some great work with Project Diana and with Digital Undivided. Her report came out that I believe it's less than 2%, if that, of African American women receive
0.2%.
That's right, 0.2%. Thank you. Receive venture capital. What are the barriers? Why is that happening?
So it's actually, I think, 0.2% of venture capital is going to African American women. Yes. And your question was?
Yeah. So why do you think that is the case?
I think that it is very difficult for women to get in to see venture capital firms. You can't just call up Sequoia or call up Kleiner Perkins and say you'd like to make an appointment. And I think that that's even more the case with African American women. That the way you get in to see and pitch to a VC is through a network, is through a warm introduction. And so unless you travel in the same circles, you don't get to do that. So I think the answer longer term is that there have to be new VC funds. There have to be new ways to finance really promising startups from more diverse founders. There are some interesting companies that have been started by African American women. We invested in a company called Uncharted Play that Jessica Matthews founded. And I think that she has just raised what will be the largest Series A for an African American woman. Don't tweet that because I need to check it, but I do believe that's the case. But she's amazing. She started out by creating a soccer ball and a jump rope that had microprocessors in them, that if you played with them for 30 minutes, you got 3 hours of electricity at night. And she did it because she had family in Nigeria, went over there for a wedding, and realized that there was a whole lot of households that just didn't have electricity at night. And that part of her business has become highly profitable. Uh, but she realized along the way that what she had actually built was an awesome microprocessor that could be put into almost anything that moves. So that's where they're moving now, is to become sort of the Intel Inside and put it into baby strollers and shopping carts and, so that you can charge your phone, you can actually use the energy you're creating and save yourself money and also make your life better.
That's great. That's great. So you mentioned AOL and thank you for that story, is one of the backers of the initial fund. And AOL is a sponsor of the conference. We appreciate it. When we was looking at aligning with AOL for tech inclusion, we had a conversation about how can AOL brand in the company, be reimagined or rethink or stay in current people's minds about this is an innovative company. It's not what it used to be, but it's an innovative company. And why is it important that people keep AOL in their hearts and their minds when they think about innovation, technology, and inclusion?
Mm-hmm. So, big question. First of all, I'd say, AOL has a storied history, right? It was the company that introduced people to the internet, made the internet accessible and safe. I first became a part of the company really during the spin. I was part of the initial board for the spin. Tim Armstrong has reimagined AOL. So the mission now is to build brands people love. And we do that by building our own brands and by building other people's brands, largely through very sophisticated ad tech and a lot of great data. So we are both a consumer-facing company and a B2B company, but with a common mission. We are going to use digital platforms, use technology, use data to get great brands out to people, our brands and other people's brands.
Well, that's great. And while we're on the technology side, when we had our call and we were talking about how we can have this dialogue, you brought up, let's make sure we're talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning and AR and VR, and I was like, yes, right? I'm a geek, I'm a nerd, I love that. And so much of the market is now focused on those technology. And when I was thinking about the question, I was like, we basically are programming these technologies to think for us, to make decisions for us, right? Look at, Siri, Google Now, Microsoft product, supposed to make our life easier. Why is it so important for those products that's being built to help us think and actually affect our behavior, actually also be built with an inclusive mindset and have diverse teams?
Yeah. So I would also like to come back to how that's important, relevant to tech as a whole, but let's start with AI. There was a really interesting piece in, I believe, Bloomberg earlier this week that was called something like AI has a dude problem. And it's really true. When you think about what we do to create AI, it's inputting massive data sets to teach a computer how to think about something, right? So if the only people who are inputting data sets and thinking about how you describe X or Y to a computer so that they understand it, if the only people doing that are white guys of a certain age, a certain background, a certain education, the output is going to be seriously skewed. There was a perfect example of this earlier this year when Microsoft put out a messenger bot, and within literally 24 hours, it started spewing all this racist, sexist, homophobic stuff because guys realized that the way it had been programmed, if they tweeted at it, it was going to imitate their language, and they ultimately had to take it down and start from scratch. And that's just one example, but you can imagine how challenged the implications are for AI unless we have a far more diverse group of people who are involved in it, who are actively part of the process of teaching computers to learn. So I think it should be high on our agenda. I was looking at some stats before I came over here, and the major AI conference, which took place in Canada earlier this year, 11% of the participants were female. This is just attendees. And when you look at the number of people who are actually graduating with a focus on that, it's significantly smaller. So it's an area we have to all be really focused on.
I agree with you 100%. So we're going to shift gears. There's two more things I really want to talk about, but around entrepreneurship. But let's talk about the initiative that you have, Built by Girls. Great program. Can you share like some of the success out of that program and some of the backstory how it got started?
Yeah, so I think you're talking about hashtag Built by Girls. Yes?
Hashtag Built by Girls.
So I have a partner, Nisha Dua. She's my partner at BBG Ventures. She is 35. We are a multi-generational company. And one of the reasons I think the partnership works is because we each have very different backgrounds, and we have different networks and know a lot of different people, and that's a multiplier. So one of the things that Nisha did before she came to work with me at BBG Ventures was to run AOL's millennial site called Cambio. And we decided to do an internship program. This was the summer before we launched BBG Ventures, where we handed over the site to 5 grads from Girls Who Code, who were exactly the right age and target audience for this website. We said to them, you rebuild this, rethink it, build tools, build whatever you want, redesign it, rethink the mission, and create a site that will excite you to come every day. And from that, because it was a great experience, we realized that by giving girls who knew some coding, a little bit of coding, the ability to see what was possible, what they could do with it, was actually hugely valuable. So Nisha has built an amazing program since then. We continue to do that digital media internship, but we added a second internship program last summer for girls to learn entrepreneurship and to understand VC. And they sat in on our pitches. They would pitch back to us every Friday so that they could get a sense of what it takes to actually get funded. And at the end of the summer, they judged the 185 projects that came out of the Girls Who Code summer programs, pulled them down to 5 finalist groups, and we flew the finalists out to San Francisco before TechCrunch Disrupt, and they did a pitch day. So 5 teams of girls who were between 15 and 17 ended up pitching to our Girls Who Fund, but also to real professional VCs who participated as well. And one of them won a $10,000 scholarship to continue building this product. And then they all went to the TechCrunch hackathon. They were the only all-girl teams in the hackathon. And they got to build products and to compete in a real-world tech setting. We have continued to think about what comes next and how we keep building this program. And Nish is now working on a platform that will match girls, high school girls, with tech mentors who share similar interests. And it's in alpha right now. It'll be in beta in the fall, but it's a way we can ultimately move from a few hundred girls to tens of thousands of girls. So it's been a great program to see blossom at AOL. I think that we talk a lot about getting girls to start coding, but key to that, or key to that being successful long-term in getting girls to choose computer science, is to let them see what they can do with it. And it's one of the things that I think universities have come around to understand, that that girls embrace computer science for different reasons. They learn to love it because they realize it's a tool that allows them to either change the world or create something extraordinary. So for us, this idea of being able to give girls who are 15, 16, 17 a start to understand what's possible if they embrace technology will be a way to get more of them to actually choose computer science as a life.
Yeah, that's a great story, and I like the availability for it to scale. That's especially with anything STEM related. That's awesome. So two more questions. Mention pitching to VCs. So we have entrepreneurs in the room. I'm sure we're gonna have entrepreneurs watching the feed and stream later. What do you look for? You know your fund focuses on female founders. What are the characteristics you look for? Everybody talks about an A+ founder. What are those, right? But so from an entrepreneur standpoint, I want to raise capital from Susan. What does that look like to you?
Yeah. So we obviously look for things like passion and the ability to really think about not just what you're building, but how you're going to build it. What the steps, what the roadmap will be, and being able to think not just about the product that you are currently building, but what in success that could enable, because ultimately you want to be able to back companies and people that will get very large over time. But I would say the most important factor is believing that this person will not give up. And the one thing I would say about entrepreneurship that is probably not talked about enough is that it's hard. We see or we hear a lot about the examples of quick success, or it sounds like it's quick success. I don't know a successful entrepreneur who has not been through very, very dark days and very, very dark months. A lot of the companies that I've either advised or I've invested in personally or now invested in as a VC have come close to going under. And so making sure that this entrepreneur is not afraid and is going to stick with it and figure out what the sweet spot is here, that almost more than anything else, I think is the key to successful companies. I am not giving up on this idea.
Confidence and resiliency.
Resilience, big.
Got it, got it. So last question. It's one of my kind of favorite questions. I like to see what people think. What product do you wish existed today that doesn't, that you would use on a daily basis? What tech product?
I don't know about using on a daily basis, but I'll tell you what still surprises me that it is not here. The one industry that has been least impacted by technology is healthcare. And the fact that I cannot do price comparisons of different tests or different medical courses of action, the fact that I can't look easily at which hospitals have the best outcomes, the fact that it's still hard to get access to and to keep track of all of your medical records. I don't know how many of you have been to a doctor's office recently or a dentist's office where once again they hand you pieces of paper to fill out and to check off. I go to the same doctors year after year after year. I have literally filled these out sometimes 10 times, and they're still handing them to me. So the fact that we don't have multiple platforms competing against each other that would really create transparency in this whole world of healthcare, transparency and the ability to own your electronic records is incredibly frustrating and surprising. And I think the reason is because we don't pay directly most of the time. So the fact that this is one area where we are not the consumer of record, we are getting the services, but often it's being paid for by someone else. I think that's part of the reason that there has not been the kind of innovation here that there has been every place else.
That's a great problem that needs to be solved. And also, if you listen, that's a problem that she has. So if anybody needs a startup idea, I will work on that problem and pitch it to Susan about a year from now. Or 6 months, whenever you can get an MVP ready. Well, great. Well, thank you, Susan. This has been a great chat and great to learn about your background. So thanks.
Thank you.